This is a new episode of The Lick, and I'm talking today with Sophie.
Love, soft as an easy chair. Love, fresh as the morning air.
Talking about your music, going way back when I remember you told me you started as a little girl. You always wanted to be a singer. I think you were about 7 when you started with lessons.
Yes, I was 7 when I started my singing lessons, but I was 4, I think, when I said for the first time that I wanted to be a professional singer. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a cliche, perhaps, but who was your inspiration?
I don't think that it was. It's odd because when I was 4, I didn't really have. It wasn't that I saw a big singer on TV and that I thought I want to be like that. It's just. It was in me or something. I don't know. I remember that I was sitting in the car with my dad and that we were listening to music, to a Dutch pop band called The Nits. I was a big fan of The Nits my whole childhood, and still am. And so it wasn't really the image of a pretty singer on television with glamour, but just the music. I wanted to make music. And so I remember we were sitting in the car and listening to the music. I said to my father, I want to be a singer. And he said, well, yeah, well, that's okay, honey, you know. And he was thinking, of course, yeah, they want to be princess or train dolphins or be a singer. Yeah. And but I stuck with the idea, and I've never said anything else than I want to be a singer my whole life. Yeah.
But then you started to take lessons and you started to develop yourself. So and I know you're coming from a classical background.
Yeah, it's true.
And now you're making a mixture of well, I don't want to talk in borders, but you're making a mixture of jazz, pop, and even maybe some classical influences.
Yeah.
So how did that start off? Why did you?
Well, I was
into classical music.
Well, I was quite naive because I thought because I knew I wanted to sing. That's the thing I knew for sure, but I didn't know in which genre. I loved musical. I loved classical music. I loved pop. I loved jazz. So I was always very widely oriented, and so I thought if I study classical music, then you can do anything you want
because it's the basics.
Which was of course very naive because when you study at a conservatory, they want you to study, and you study classical music, they want you to study classical music. They don't want you to go and experiment with other genres. So I studied there for 4 years, and then I realized that it was too limited for me. I couldn't be free in class. I still love classical music. I still listen to it, and sometimes I still even sing classical music. But what I love about jazz is that what's on paper is just the starting off point. You know, you learn the chords and you learn the notes, and then you put it aside.
Right.
And then you start to think, what is my story? What do I want to do with this song? You get the chance to make your own song out of a well-known song. Yeah. And so for me, there's no difference between the way I treat my own songs and the way I treat songs of others, because in the end you have to make it your own.
Right.
So I gave a lot of singing lessons, and what I always said to people was listen to as many versions of one song as you can find. Yeah. and then put it away, and then don't listen anymore, and then start singing it yourself, and then you will notice once you start singing to the versions of others, it will it won't match anymore, and then
because then you make it your own.
Yes, and then you know that you're on the right path of making a song your own.
Can you give an example of a song which you made your own?
Yeah, I think the biggest example for me is Fields of Gold.
From Sting?
From Sting originally, and then I listened to the version of Eva Cassidy a lot. I think she's a big inspiration for, of course, almost every singer. I think the way she, just her natural sound.
Right.
And the way she appears to be totally herself.
And the way she tells the story, perhaps.
And the way she tells the story, yeah. And my uncle had just passed away, and he was a wonderful bass player, a double bass player. His name was Dickie Schulte-Nordholt. Played with Gruppo Sportivo and well-known Dutch act De Rachende Mannen. And I wanted to do something for him. And he was such a positive person, so I didn't want it to be a sad song. And I always loved the lyrics of Fields of Gold. And so I wanted to do it with just double bass.
Okay.
So, and then we wanted to be even more uplifting, so we did it in swing.
Yeah, because it is kind of a sad song, actually.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a sad song. I mean, we're only here on this planet for such a short amount of time. So why not embrace the time that you have here, and when someone is gone, think back with a smile,
Right.
Don't cry, just be happy that you got a chance to know someone.
Yeah.
And so for me it has a different, and I think that's what it's about, you know. So we recorded it with double bass, and for my first album it's Splendidly Imperfect. And so I think that's a good example of how you can recreate. Yeah, and from your own experiences, it becomes your own song.
And that's, I think, also something you mentioned before. That's really like a signature of your own, because you are really focusing on the story.
Yeah.
The stories of songs.
Yeah, definitely.
As well as when you're performing songs of other artists, as well as your own.
Yeah.
How does that work with you when you start writing?
When I start writing, I usually have a theme that I wanna one sentence that I like, or a certain feeling that I want to capture, or so usually it starts with one melodic line that I like, and I always combine the lyrics and the melody at the same time. It almost never happens that I have lyrics and then write a melody to them, because I think it's one thing.
Right.
For me, it's one thing.
It comes together, perhaps.
Yeah, it comes together. So sometimes the song "Soundtrack of My Life," that's an example that's on my second album, Great Day. That's really an example of that I really liked that sentence, that I was watching a movie and I thought, why the romantic movies, why is real life never like that,
Yeah, right.
The girl is perfect, and then they know each other 2 days, and he asks her to marry her, and then she cries and her makeup stays perfect on her face, And then it popped into my mind, "Soundtrack of My Life," and I thought, that sounds quite cool, So that's an example of where I had just one line and then I wrote the song to it. Yeah.
So when we are talking about your background, like you said, you started with classical lessons in classical conservatory here in Amsterdam, and then after a few years you switched to the jazz, and now you're doing all kinds of stuff. But I can imagine that the classical world is very different from the jazz. So also in singing itself, with timing and phrasing and all things are coming out differently.
Yeah.
So can you tell something about that experience?
Well, people are always asking me technique-wise, what's the difference? Because the sound is very different.
Yeah.
And you don't hear many singers that make the switch where you cannot hear that they studied classical or that they were a classical singer. So technique-wise, I think the big difference is that when you sing classical, you lower your larynx. So for me, that's the biggest difference in sound and in what happens in your body. But otherwise, I firmly believe that in both genres, in every genre, I mean, even when you're not singing any lyrics at all, you're telling a story. And I think that's the base for how I treat every song, whether it's a classical song from Fauré or a jazz standard or a pop standard. And I think that's in the end what makes me me. That I unite those things together because of the story that I tell. So for me, the switch in sound, I've always been doing both things at the same time, so that was not a big challenge for me. But the biggest challenge between classical and jazz, but also pop, is the freedom that you take. I mean, if you have an eighth note in classical, you sing an eighth note. You don't.
Right.
Sing, you know.
You sing what's on paper.
There. Yeah.
Right.
And the freedom that you have is in interpretation. But otherwise, you know, you don't have. In my opinion, you don't have that much freedom. And I can sing a little piece a cappella, classical, if you want.
Go ahead.
And
if you're ready.
Oh, now?
Yeah, if you like, or do you want to?
Yeah, I can do it now or later or now. Well, I've always loved French composers, French songs, and I think it's also a little bit the link between classical music and jazz music. If you look at the chords, if you look, you know, at the sound, and
can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, it's a feeling, and it's hard to really put it practical in words. But I think if you would write out the sheet music in chords, I think you would have an overlap. But also in sound, in the darkness, in the warmth, and in the communication, in the language. You know, the poems that they use, they're beautiful.
And which French composers are you talking about?
Fauré, Debussy, Poulenc,
yeah.
And Fauré has always been a favorite of mine. I think my all-time favorite is Après un rêve. I sang that song at my very first audition at the conservatory in Amsterdam.
Okay.
So it's always been a very important song for me. I can do. You want a little?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Dans une sommeil plus charmé ton image, je veux le bonheur, ardent mirage. Tes yeux étaient plus doux, ta voix pure et sonore, tu comme un ciel éclairé par l'aurore.
The biggest switch that I had to make, the freedom that you have, you know, and really start experimenting. How late can I be, you know? When is it too late? And when is it really nice to you know, just wait before you, and that's the whole thing that I had to start to explore when I started singing jazz music. So I think a good example for me is the song Evergreen from Barbra Streisand, because I used to sing that all the time when I was still studying classical music, and just very straight, and, you know.
Yeah.
And now with my guitar player Wesley, we've made it more into almost a bossa feel.
Okay.
and you have all the time, you know, that you want to take and just be very free.
Okay.
So I think that's maybe a good
maybe he
example.
can join you.
Join us.
Okay.
I'll show you how we play it now, I think.
Okay.
Small part. Love, soft as an easy chair. Love, fresh as the morning air. One love that is shared by two. I have found with you, like a rose under the April snow. I was always certain love would grow. Love, ageless and evergreen, seldom seen by two. You and I will make each night a first, every day a beginning. Spirits rise and their dance is unrehearsed. They warm and excite us, 'cause we are the brightest love. Two lights that shine as one. Morning glory and the midnight sun. Time we've learned to sail above. Time won't change the meaning of one love, ageless and
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys.
That's so nice, people. Freedom to me, you know? Constantly communicating and checking, what's he gonna do, what am I gonna do, you know? That's music to me. And the way you feel that day defines how you're gonna play and sing it, you know? It's a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, that's also true in classical music, and I think that's the wonderful thing that classical singers can do. But for me, that was the difficult part. And so I used to sing it much more, you know, straight. Yeah. I don't even know if I can still do it that way. Can you play straight? Love, ageless and evergreen, seldom seen by two. You and I will make each night a first, every day a beginning. Spirits rise and their dance is unreal.
that you can hear the difference. You know, it's the same song, and it's still nice to sing, but it's less your own. You know, it's just what's written down.
Yeah, it's also a lot in the phrasing, which makes it different, and like you said, the timing.
Yeah, I think you stop telling the story that way. You know, it's just a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song, so it stands on its own and still beautiful. But for me, it's always interesting what someone wants to do with it, and it has to move me in some way. Sometimes I think it's beautiful and it saddens me, or it moves me, or it makes me angry. But at least it does something, you know.
You want to express your emotion.
Yeah. I want to be moved in which way, you know, in whatever way.
Yeah. And talking about expressions, and can you also tell something about, because you've been singing for quite some years, and I can imagine that sometimes it might also be a struggle. It might also be hard to keep going and to get where you want to be. Can you tell something about those experiences? Did you have struggles?
Of course. And I think struggles are very, very necessary to evolve and to grow. And it's funny because at the conservatory in Amsterdam, at my jazz studies, I wrote an essay about crises of big artists.
Okay.
Because it's a very interesting thing when you look into the lives of big artists. A lot of times struggles, the big struggles in their life brings them further.
Right.
And often create that specific thing that makes them so successful. You know, I think a beautiful example was with Billie Holiday. She sang Strange Fruit. And the struggle then, of course, was with the whole black and white thing, and that she was the first woman who she did a tour in the south of the States, and she saw, of course, still the trouble there because she was from a different area, and she decided to put the poem Strange Fruit to a song. So I think it shows in a beautiful way how the difficult things in life, the things that you struggle with, you as an artist, you put them into something positive, and you put them into art.
Yeah.
So for me,
but sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
in this particular example, you're talking about a protest song, which is maybe even something bigger.
Yeah, of course, but I think a lot of times, because she was struggling with the fact that she was
African American?
No, half. She was half, I think. So she was struggling with that. But anyway, for me it was I was struggling with so many things. What being a singer meant to me. What I wanted, because I loved so many genres. So who was I think was my biggest struggle. And then the whole commercial thing around it, making money or doing what you love.
Right.
Which unfortunately isn't always the same thing. And now I discovered in Indonesia that it is the same thing. I finally started doing what I loved, and working towards that was a whole process.
Right.
And because of the set list that I made for Indonesia, I didn't think of commerce. I just thought, if this is the last thing I'm going to do as a singer, if this was my last performance, what would I want that performance to be like? You know?
Yeah.
And so I think you are at your best when you're doing what you love. So that's what I learned. And I struggled with being a singer these days. You know, how do you get yourself out there? How do you stay yourself?
Yeah. Did you find some answers to that?
Yeah, I think you have to stop thinking what other people will think of you and what other people will like or dislike, and if you are yourself, it's such a cliche, but if you start doing what you love and what makes you unique, then you will finally find people who will love that. But then you are at your best. I mean,
Okay, so talking about these struggles, you were saying, well, I also had to choose, or it was a hard time to choose between the different roads you're going to follow musically.
Yeah.
So, and you have this classical background, which already developed your voice technically as well. So, can you tell something more about that? How did you find your way?
Well, I think technically that I'm doing things different than a lot of other singers because I don't use the belting technique. I mix my voice in all registers, and of course that's something that I learned in the classical department, but I changed it around a bit to work in other genres. And I think that is what makes my sound unique, because I don't know many singers who do that. So even in the low registers, I still mix my voice.
Can you give an example for us how it would sound when you are belting and when you're what you are doing?
Well, for example, let me see. You have this song With Every Breath I Take.
Yeah.
Jazz standard, and it starts with "There's not a morning that I open up my eyes. There's not a morning." I still use I still mix it. If I wouldn't do it, "There's not a morning that I open up my eyes." There's
Really different sound as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And what makes that sound different?
The fact that you, well, the anatomy of it, it has to do with which parts of your vocal cords are vibrating. But it has to do with that I mix in my head voice with my, Eva Tieste would hate me now for saying this, but that I mix my head voice with my chest voice.
Right.
So for me, there is no head or chest voice.
It's just one.
It's one big range.
Right.
Which makes my voice flexible, you know.
More flexible?
I think so, yeah, because there are no boundaries within your range. You just have your whole range, you know. So I can go from very high to very low, and there's no difference for me. Of course, with the every sound vibrates in a different part of your body. You know, if I'm singing very low, it vibrates here.
Yeah.
If I go a little bit higher, it vibrates here, and the very high notes really go that way.
Yeah.
So it's important that you realize in which part of your register you're working, because a lot of times people wanna. When they're singing the high notes, they want to force it out.
Yeah.
And they're trying...
Sometimes they even sing like this, hoping that it comes out better.
Yeah, I think in belting it works a little different, because sometimes then you need a little bit that position. But I'm no expert in belting. But when you're not... When you're not, you have to realize which register you're using. If you're trying to sing the high notes with this part of your body, it doesn't work.
No.
You know, it has to. The guitar has a klankkast. Body. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your body has multiple bodies.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So that was a big realization for me. And also breath support, of course. Which is also always kind of a mystical thing everybody's talking about, and weird exercises. But the fact of the matter is you're breathing the minute that you arrive on this planet until the day that you die. So you do it every day, the whole day. So I think it's just a matter of working what your body already knows how to do. As a child, I was always singing in my chest voice. I remember that I was in a musical production of Sound of Music, and I got to sing Edelweiss, and I was very proud. But I was always singing Edelweiss, Edelweiss, like that, you know.
Yeah.
And then my singing teacher said, you know, try to look at it as if you're not climbing a mountain, but you're already on top of the mountain. And then for the very first time I sang Edelweiss, Edelweiss, and I thought, oh wow, you know, this is easy. It's so much more easy, and there's no tension on your throat. So I still have a recording of myself, 11 years old, singing that for the very first time with using my mixed voice for the very first time. And she was a classical singer, and then I started using that way of singing from that moment on, actually.
So you will sing a song for us. I think it would be Great Day.
Great Day. Yeah.
Okay. And there's a story behind this song, and of course there's always a story behind the song, but this one in particular, can you tell something more about that?
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier about struggles, and I wrote this song, I think about 2 years ago, and I had a difficult time. I was much heavier than I am now, and very unhappy, and I really decided. I still can remember the day that I was sitting in the tram, and I saw myself in the reflection of the window, and I didn't recognize myself, and I thought, who is that sad person sitting there? And it was me. And I decided from that day on that I wanted to do things differently, that I wanted to be, that actually anything would be better than the way I was feeling at that point. And I started making lists for myself, things that I knew were good or not good for me, very practical things like eating more healthy foods or exercising more, but also exploring which friendships are healthy for you, the people around you, to create a more positive atmosphere. And it started out with very small steps, but in the end it changed my whole life. And now 2 years later, I don't think my life could have been any more different than it was then. And I decided that I wanted every day from that moment on to be a great day, and I made that decision for myself, and I wrote the song Great Day. Yeah.
But also very recently, I think in December, you had some problems with your back. You had an operation. Yeah. And that was also kind of a hard time for you, if I'm correct.
Definitely. I was much more happy already, but I was still struggling with being a singer. You know, how that reflected on me as a singer. I mean, when you're a singer, it's so close to who you are as a person. So you're always reflecting back on you know, the songs that you sing and the way you are on stage. And so I suffered from a severe hernia in December, and I had to have emergency surgery. And I couldn't do anything for about 3 months. I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I could just...
It's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it was really, really heavy, and a difficult time for me, but it forced me to stand still for a while, because you know, we're always in this day and age, we're always on the go. We're forced to do so many things, and we force ourselves to do so many things. And now I was just laying there for 3 months, and at first it made things worse, because I thought, you know, I don't know if I want to be a singer anymore. It was very intense.
But where did that come from?
Well, that you start reflecting on normally you're so up close, so you can't really analyze what's happening and if you're happy. And
Now you could step back a bit.
I could take a step back and really see myself from a distance.
Right.
And I've always been very fortunate. I have a wonderful Dutch label where I recorded my last album, and I'm so thankful for that. But I was just struggling with who I am as a singer, and I'm very fortunate that they're saying to me, be yourself and look for who you are. But I thought, maybe I have to take some time off to figure out, and then we got a chance to go to the tour in Indonesia, and I was still waiting for that urge to sing. Normally I always had, if I had a sore throat or I couldn't wait to start singing,
Right.
and now I hadn't sung for 3 months and I didn't feel any urge. And then I thought, well, I'm just going to go to Indonesia and see what will happen. And
There wasn't like a panic or something because you didn't have that urge you always used to have?
no, I was kind of numb, which frightened me because I had never been like that before. But I was looking forward, of course, to Indonesia. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity. But I thought, well, if this is the last thing, as I said earlier, if this is the last thing I do, what do I want to sing?
Yeah.
What comes from the heart? So there are only heart songs in my set list that I played there. And then I went to, my flight went through Abu Dhabi, and we had a delay for 11 hours in Abu Dhabi. And I sat there in a chair in a lounge, and I had to wait for 11 hours. And I almost missed my performance at Java Jazz because we were supposed to arrive early in the morning, and then I would have my performance late at night. And now it was, I arrived 2 minutes before showtime.
Whoa.
2 hours before 2 hours before showtime. So
Close call.
Very close call.
Yeah.
And the urge came.
Yeah.
Because it was, everybody was saying to me on the plane, you're not gonna make your show.
Yeah.
The traffic is terrible in Jakarta. You're not gonna make it. And I said, yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it. So then, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I'm totally convinced. And I found myself again, and no more stage fright, no more just enjoying.
Yeah. So maybe it's also interesting to tell a bit about your philosophy in music and in singing particularly. Can you...
I think my philosophy in singing is that, particularly about sound, is that, again, when you tell a story, the sound will follow. I think people are always asking when I give them a singing lesson, what is my sound? Well, of course, everybody has multiple sounds.
Right.
You have. Normally, I work with the sound that is closest to your speaking voice. That because when you're telling a story, you want it to be, easy to understand. So, in basic, I work with the sound that's closest to your speaking voice. But then, when you're angry, you use, of course, a different sound. But I always want it to be because of what you're telling in the story. And I see a lot of singers that are using sounds because of what they think a singer should sound like,
right.
or
or what the stars are doing, and they want to copy. Copy it.
And I think there are no mistakes, but as long as it's your own story and your own decision, and And
so what can you recommend to follow your own sound, your own philosophy on that?
Well, I think that lyrics are very important. So for me, I always take them out of the song context, because a lot of times you have the melody line, and people put the words in the melody line, you know. But a lot of times it clashes with how you would normally say a certain sentence, so I think it's important that you that's the biggest lesson that I learned from my singing teacher G. Titulaar at the Amsterdam Conservatory at the jazz department. He said to me the very first time we talked, he saw me sing, and he said, you have a beautiful voice, but you sing way too much. You have to stop singing.
It's like with a lot of musicians play too many notes.
Yes. About being virtuoso,
right.
you know, or trying to make everything beautiful. If you make everything beautiful, it becomes ugly.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
If you dare to tell a story and dare to show the ugliness in some things, then when you highlight something and makes one thing beautiful, it becomes very beautiful. And I think that's my philosophy. Tell your story, and look at the words in apart from the song and what they mean to you. When you ask people what the song's about, I used to say, well, the song is about this woman. No, it's about what's your interpretation. You know, what's your story.
But then you focus more like on the pronunciation of specific words.
Also, the time that you take and the sound that you make. For instance, Guess Who I Saw Today is a song that's on my first album, and it's about someone who cheats and the wife finds out. Yeah. So I'm the cheated wife, and my husband comes home after a long day of work, you know, and the way that you use your timing and that you use. That's the important thing.
Right.
And not so much the melody, because it's there anyway.
Yeah.
It's going to be there.
It's more the tension you're giving to the song, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this wonderful interview. We always close our conversations with a specific lick or trick from our guests. So maybe you can tell our viewers at home your specific lick or phrase or whatever you want to share.
Well, I think one of the things that I do is that sometimes I highlight a word in my lyrics by really speaking it instead of singing it. So when I just sang Evergreen, you sing like a rose, you know?
Right.
You highlight the word rose by just saying the word rose instead of prolonging like a rose, like a rose. And also what my teacher G. Titulaar told me is whenever you sing the word love, it's the best word in the world, you know? Let me see. Well, song with love. I mean, that's 1,000 songs. It's an evergreen, but well. Anyway, dare to embrace that word. You know, love. It's wonderful. Instead of just singing a word, I think that's really a typical thing that I do. Kind of making love to the words or something. I don't know. Kind of
like your personal signature.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from Mother Sophie with love.
Yeah.
I can smell the coffee freshly poured into my favorite cup. Golden toast with butter and a kiss from you on time. And I feel it's a great day, such a great day to be me. And I feel elevated, recreated. This
to all the singers out there, keep using your voice. Keep being splendidly imperfect and be your own unique sound and tell your story and decide what that is, and that will be beautiful. So keep on singing. Enjoy the music.
I open up the curtains and a new day invites us in. Ooh, read the morning paper
Yeah.